Good afternoon. Bon après-midi. Yesterday, the Port of Montreal went on strike, despite there having been 7 months of notice. The Liberal government has failed to facilitate a negotiated settlement during those 7 months. En août 2020, un arrêt de travail de 19 jours au Port de Montréal aurait coûté 600 millions de dollars. Cette grève s'est terminée par une entente entre les syndicats et les patronats pour négocier au cours des 7 prochains mois. Cette grève a pris fin en mars. Les libéraux de M. Trudeau n'ont pris aucune mesure. En fait, la ministre Tassi a aggravé la situation avec ses commentaires il y a un mois. C'était injuste et la situation avec les négociations a détérioré après ça. Because of the Liberals' failure to get a deal done, jobs and contracts are at risk, and millions of dollars will be lost. Canada is already in a recession and is facing one of the highest unemployment rates in the G7. Workers and businesses cannot afford a work disruption at the Port of Montreal. Pendant une pandémie, nous croyons qu'une grève générale dans un port aussi essentiel devrait être évitée. C'est pour le bien des Canadiens, des travailleurs portuaires, des entreprises et de tous les secteurs. Il est important que le gouvernement se mette au travail pour résoudre ce problème dès maintenant. Nous allons appuyer la législation visant à maintenir ce port essentiel ouvert. Mais ce n'était pas nécessaire d'en arriver là. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes dans cette situation à cause de l'incapacité des libéraux de conclure un accord. Ce gouvernement est toujours lent. We will be supporting legislation to keep this essential port open. But it shouldn't ever have to come to this. We are in this situation today because of the Liberals' inability to get a deal done. From the pandemic to the economy, the Trudeau government is always 2 steps behind. A Conservative government would always be 2 steps ahead. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
And we'll now take questions, starting with questions on the phone. Quick reminder, as usual, 1 question, 1 follow-up. Operator, do we have a first question?
Thank you. You may press star 1. Si vous avez une question, vous pouvez appuyer sur étoile 1 si vous avez une question. La première question est de Madeleine Blais-Morin de Radio-Canada. La ligne est ouverte.
Bonjour, M. O'Toole. J'aimerais savoir comment vous réagissez au fait que le premier ministre a dit ce matin que ni son bureau, ni celui du ministre Sajjan, ni le ministre Sajjan savaient que c'était une plainte de nature MeToo, la plainte qui avait été communiquée par l'Ombudsman.
L'histoire du premier ministre change à chaque jour. Et les Canadiens et Canadiennes, particulièrement, méritent la vérité en ce qui concerne la situation avec Général Vance. On a posé des questions aujourd'hui sur ça. Et malheureusement, le premier ministre a dit les choses, selon moi, pas la vérité avec la situation. Et on a besoin d'une réponse.
Vous dites, M. O'Toole, que les Canadiens méritent la vérité, que l'histoire change chaque jour, qu'il n'a pas dit la vérité. Est-ce que vous allez jusqu'à accuser le premier ministre d'avoir menti?
Quelle est la vérité? Tous les dirigeants dans le bureau du premier ministre savaient la situation avec la plainte. Il y a 3 ans, mais pas le premier ministre, son chef, son adjoint, le Privy Council Office, le bureau de conseil privé, avec une situation avec notre général pour les forces armées. Les Canadiens méritent une réponse claire sur la situation et les Canadiennes en uniforme méritent un gouvernement qui va combattre une culture d'harcèlement.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Ian Bailey from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Mr. O'Toole, just checking, what's your position on the ongoing debate over Ontario's seeking federal support for sick leave pay benefits? What would a Conservative government do that the Liberal government is not doing on this matter?
As you know, Ian, we've always tried to work with the government to get supports to Canadians, both individually and businesses. We expect the government to try and work with the provinces to get that support out, particularly if there's the ability to coordinate the administration of that support. We've heard a lot of rhetoric from the Prime Minister over the last year about we're all in this together. How can he work with provinces like Ontario to deliver that important support?
And a follow-up question on a completely different subject. Could you explain your recent comments to the Delta Chamber of Commerce on Australia and mandatory voting? Do you see this as a measure that you'd like to bring in for Canada if you become the Prime Minister? Do you stand by your comments to the Chamber of Commerce in Delta, BC?
Well, I'm glad people are tuning in to my chambers of commerce. I've done 12 in many great cities across British Columbia. I received a question with respect to proportional representation, and I've long been opposed to proportional representation. Mr. Trudeau promised that he would make a change and then broke that promise. I am hearing from some people that think mandatory voting would allow citizens to see the importance of the democratic process. At a time we see confidence in public institutions, from the Prime Minister's office to the Chief of Defence office, deteriorating. How can we examine ideas to recommit to our parliamentary democracy? We're just in listening mode, Ian.
Operator, next question.
Thank you, merci. The next question is from Stephanie Levitz from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Thanks for taking the question. I want to ask first about whether, now that we're a little bit out from the budget, what your direct response is to the Liberals' childcare plan, and whether, if you won power, would you dial back the childcare spending, or would you keep the same level of spending the Liberals are planning for transfers directly to parents and to provinces?
The Conservatives have long believed in giving flexibility to families and helping all Canadian families, whether you're in a city, in the suburbs, or in rural Canada. And if we've learned anything, Stephanie, from the pandemic, I think families want even more flexibility to make decisions with some temporary work or partial work from home situations. So we're going to look at delivering a platform to support families that will give them that flexibility they want. I would add, this is the 9th time the Liberals have made this promise. They didn't consult any of the provinces before making it. So I think Canadians should judge for themselves whether they're sincere.
Okay, thank you. But you didn't directly answer my question about whether you would keep the dollar figure there, or you would just axe it if you became Prime Minister. But I'll follow up and just ask on something different. A member of your caucus, Tamara Jensen, is coming under a lot of fire from LGBTQ advocacy groups for comments she made in the House of Commons, but also subsequent decisions to block or refuse to engage with people who are seeking to talk to her own constituents, about the comments she's made. And I'm wondering if you can address that. You appeared with her in an event, I believe, last night, and can you talk about whether you've spoken to her on this issue?
I was at a Cloverdale chamber last week, and Ms. Jansen apologized for her remarks in the debate in the House, not just to Canadians in the Commons, but to the Liberal MP in the debate and the exchange. I think that all of our MPs should listen to their constituents and take ideas, concerns, and criticisms. In my job, I'm getting quite used to taking many criticisms, and I think that's part of our parliamentary democracy. So I'll be sending that tone to my team.
And we'll now take questions from the room. Ça va maintenant prendre les questions dans la salle. Teresa?
Hello, Teresa Wright with the Canadian Press. Just following up on the question about the comments that you made about adopting mandatory voting. I know you're saying that you're in listening mode, but how seriously are you considering this?
Well, as I said before, the question was about proportional representation. And of course, Mr. Trudeau, like many things, promised the sun, the moon, and the stars to win in 2015 and has slowly been breaking literally every promise. I've never supported proportional representation because it actually can lead to more division in a big and diverse country like ours. Some people look to Australia, a similar parliamentary democracy, with their approach with respect to mandatory voting. It comes up occasionally, so we're in listening mode. We haven't announced any policy whatsoever, but one thing I do talk about a lot is the erosion in trust in public officials in our institutions. The Prime Minister, I believe today, let people down in his latest version of the truth on the General Vance story. He's undergoing his third personal ethics investigation. So how can we restore public confidence in the political system?
And I'll ask the follow-up question that my colleague Stephanie was trying to get from you in terms of, ask whether you would actually scale back funding that has been announced by the Liberal government for childcare if you were to become the next Prime Minister.
Well, we're going to help more families than the Liberal plan that they will never implement. And how can I say that? Because they've promised this 8 previous times. They are also committing the provinces to a program that they didn't consult the provinces on. So a lot of the spending would be contingent on the provinces. We want to make sure that there's support for families. We're in the process of finalizing our policy in this regard as well. I think Canadians will see it's better, it's more flexible, and it makes sure, regardless of where you are, we want to help families juggle the joys and challenges of working and raising kids.
And we'll go back on the phone for one last question. Nous retournons au téléphone pour une dernière question. Opérateur, avons-nous une prochaine question?
Il y a no further questions on the phone. Nous n'avons plus de questions pour le moment.
This concludes the press conference. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.